Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Devontae, and I sacrifice my time so you don't have to. This downfall video is going to be a little bit different because out of all the superstars I've talked about so far, the difference between them and, say this guy right here is, well, unfortunately, with the other guys, they've actually had a rise, they've actually peaked, and then they had a downfall. With this guy right here, he just stayed stagnant. He stayed stagnant from point A to point B. I haven't seen a rise. And honestly, you can't fall when you're already at ground level. Will Hobbs is one of the most peculiar bookings I think I've ever seen in the history of professional wrestling, given his stature, given his charisma for the most part, given his backstory. And I know a lot of people want to just chalk it up because it's so easy to do that nowadays, where you could just chalk everything up to racism. Oh, he's not given a chance because of his skin color. Oh, he's not given a chance because of the way he talks, because of his upbringing, because of his background overall. And I think it's such a bullshit cop-out. You don't, and this is why I keep telling everyone, stop going to the extremes to have to prove a point that's directly in front of your face. You don't have to go to the extreme. You don't have to talk about Will Hobbs and being held back by racism, this, that, and the third, especially when there's counterpoints to correct the situation of what the hell you're talking about. Swerve Strickland was a world champion. Ricky Starks got a push. Jade Cargill is the longest reigning champion in that company's history. You don't have to go so far in order to prove a point. And by the way, when I say company's history, I'm talking about strictly AEW. I'm not talking about ROH or anything like that. Strictly AEW. Currently, right now, at the moment, you have someone like Sasha Banks, who is arguably the #1 talent in that entire company from a women's perspective. You know what I mean? It's kind of similar to the WWE stuff, where it's like there's only so many black wrestlers, and the majority of those black wrestlers have spots. The majority of those black talents are legitimately positioned to be something, if not at the very least previously positioned to be something, except for Will Hobbs. And this is why I say don't bring up race or anything like that, because there are so many other things you could look at, in particular his size. And we've talked about this 1,000,001 times. I don't think Tony Khan has a racist bone in his body. I don't think he discriminates at all against color. I do, however, think he does discriminate against size. At the very least, if he's not discriminating against people who are over 165 pounds, over 205 pounds, then at the very least, I think he's discriminating against not so much the people in itself as far as the size is considered in regards to being against them, but discriminating in the sense that he's for the smaller guys. Does that make any sense? It's not that I hate the big guys, it's that I love the small guys. That, or you just call him an incompetent booker, or better yet, all of the above. Can we go with that? But it goes beyond that with a Will Hobbs. See, you look at his upbringing, you see when he came at first to AEW, and he immediately started to hang around people like Taz, for an example, and you look at that pairing and you say to yourself, okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Taz has always been great on the microphone. He could be a guy to get behind Will Hobbs. Like, it could be a Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar scenario, you know what I mean? But then you started to add more people to the stable and more people to the stable, and it just got to a point where it's like, bro, what are we doing here? And mind you, I understand, I think the first person Taz managed was Brian Cage, but it's like, why go through all of that? Like, you know what I mean? Why go through all of that when you could legitimately... Brian Cage is a fucking nobody. Brian Cage and his whole redemption arc and all the stuff that he was trying to do to get around the fact that he lost to a fucking woman. I think it was Tessa Blanchard. Like, he's a lost soul. Don't even worry about him. You know, you got someone at the time, now he's actually starting to get older. I think he has me by a year, so he's got to probably be like 33 at this point. When he first came out to AEW, he was like, what, 28 years old? 29 years old? Like, you had him in the palm of your hands to really make something out of him. Now he's starting to get mileage on him. He's out right now with an injury, recovering from a long-standing injury. And it's like, damn, bruh, the opportunities that you could have actually used for this man to get over. You put him with Team Taz, then you started teaming up with Ricky Starks, wasting every fucking potential in the world to legitimately get him over. You're putting them in all these small guy matches and having them eat pinfalls from a lot of people, eating pinfalls from Darby Allin. I remember him jobbing the guys like fucking Jungle Boy, for an example. People like that of that nature. Like, what are you doing, bruh? What are you doing? You have all the potential right along with guys like Warlow. You know, it's funny. You want to be a legitimate alternative to WWE? At least at the time, maybe not so much now, because it looks like WWE has a bit of a mix with small guys and big guys. And not even really small guys, more so medium guys. I wouldn't necessarily classify someone like a Seth Rollins as a small guy anymore. He has built to him. You know, just because he can do the high flying moves doesn't necessarily mean that he's a small guy. He's medium sized. He's like a Shawn Michaels and a Bret Hart. Whereas guys in AEW, man, it's just nothing but fucking small guys. The only guy who I see in the main event scene who is big, and, you know, I guess it depends what you mean by big, but somewhat, I guess, at least consistently booked in the main event scene, is someone like a Jon Moxley. I can't think of anybody else who's consistently booked in the main event scene who is big. As a matter of fact, go down the championship lineage. Has anyone ever won that belt that was big? I'm trying to think. Jericho was the first ever champion. Jon Moxley was the champion. Kenny Omega was the champion. Adam Page was the champion. CM Punk was the champion. Back to Jon Moxley. MJF was the champion, right? The closest person is maybe Samoa Joe. And Samoa Joe was small as hell. I mean, Samoa Joe stature-wise may be big, but he's actually very short. Like, legitimately, a Hoss meat, all that lame gay shit that I like to say in AEW, like, no, I've never seen, and it's not as if you haven't had the potential with a guy like a Warlow before you fuck that up. It's like you have all the potential in the world to put guys like Will Hobbs, to put guys like Warlow in that spot, and this word is going to be used throughout the series. They just flounder with whatever spot they happen to be in at the moment. And it's not even just looking at the potential for building up a division that can legitimately rival WWE by having guys at the top who actually have a larger than life look on top of them that you can build up if you knew what you were doing creatively. Speaking of which, I can give you a storyline right now for an example who I can, and it's not as if you can't pull this off still. They won't ever do this because they don't have the balls to do anything like this because they're so fixated on their stupid fucking wrestling, and whenever they can't really get over with the actual wrestling, then they want to use shock value and shock factors, and not shock value and shock factor from, like, say, a storyline perspective, but legitimately the in-ring action in itself is for the sole purpose of shock value. Look, you have a guy like Will Hobbs, dude who has a background coming from the hood. They were actually running vignettes on Buddy, right? All this shit coming from the hood, walking around the projects and shit like that. Where's Will Hobbs from? I think he's from I think homie's from California too, right? I think he's from Cali. You could that's a whole backstory in itself as far as what you could have done for him, bruh. You could even made up some shit if you want to. You could have talked about him coming up with the Bloods or the Crips, some shit like that. I guarantee you it ain't as if he hasn't been around that shit if he's from Cali. You know what I mean? Especially in the 90s. Oh, fuck yeah, man. And then you got a guy like Swerve Strickland, for an example, who I ain't gonna say he did not grow up in poverty, but I ain't gonna sit here and pretend as if he grew up in the mean streets of Seattle, fucking Washington, for an example, right? You mean to tell me, especially with all the comments that Swerve Strickland has made in the past about not necessarily disassociating himself from the black community, he never said that, don't let anyone fool you, but he always had like this position about him where he's like, well, shit, I appreciate representing my culture, but at the same time, let it be known that I work for me, that I did it for me. You know, that kind of mentality. And he had a lot of people who were pushing back against him in black Twitter or black social media, right? You mean to tell me you couldn't have used a feud like that for Swerve Strickland to be a world champion, and Will Hobbs calls him out? You wear this get up with your dreadlocks and these gold teeth in your mouth and shit like that. Homeboy, you ain't never grew up where I grew up at. You don't come from where I come from. You see, I hear those little comments, those little snickering comments about you talking about you wanting to do you and you wanting to represent you, and you ain't really necessarily down for this or down for that. Well, I'm down for this. I'm actually down for the culture. I ain't no motherfucking token. That kind of shit, you feel me? That's the kind of shit that he would have spoke on. Pretty much the same shit that you're going to hear in the comment section aimed at me because of the stuff that I say about the black community. That kind of shit could be said about Will Hobbs. But nah, they don't want to touch on shit like that. That's the kind of shit that you can use to make a superstar, bro. Ain't as if you have to go after the world championship right away. That's the kind of shit you want to use to build up a guy, put him into a position, and hopefully he can go after the world championship someday. Because that's the kind of shit, at least in this day and age, this climate, that could turn a person's face. You know what I mean? And instead, you just let him do stupid shit, bro. Shit like wasting time with Ricky Starks. Both guys individually could be doing their own thing and honestly getting over in their own way. But instead, you stick them both together to do this little small thing here, and it has no effect at all, not on the company, not on their career. You can really take one of them, switch any of them out, and put another person in, do the exact same story, and it doesn't really mean anything in the end of the day. There's so much potential that you have with a Will Hobbs, bro. And I hate how people, they like to misconstrue his career. They bring up little small things. He talk about things like, oh, well, Devontae, don't you realize he was with CM Punk? That was a rub in and stuff. Really? Because where's that rub at right now, huh? Where's that rub at now? I don't see no fucking rub. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, you say you see a rub, but what I see, I mean, what do I see? And it makes matters even worse, because remember, throughout his duration, when they were trying to build him up and all this shit, bro, like, we're talking about this man. They had this man doing the dumbest shit, bro. Teaming up with QT Marshall, teaming up with Don Callis. Always the back player, always the backbone of whatever stable he has to represent. Always to be made to look a fool up by the smaller guys. A rich history in regards to his background. A rich history as far as his story is considered. And this is how you want to put him across. This is how you want to present him. Dude can have a high quality manager right now. Dude could legitimately be doing something for himself right now. But nah, just a long line of people being abused by Tony Khan because they happen to look a certain way. And I ain't talking about skin color. They happen to carry themselves in a certain kind of way. They don't flip as many times. They don't come from New Japan Pro Wrestling. They haven't done 30 years on the fucking indie circuit. Nah. And Meg Madden's much worse from my understanding. He was on the indie circuit before he came to AEW for like 10 years. That's what I heard. He was on the indie circuit for a minute before he came to AEW. And you know what? I'll end it on this right here, because this ain't really that long of a video, because it's Will Hobbs. You really can't talk much about the man's career because he hasn't really had that much of a career in AEW. You know, it's funny. You hear all these talks about, especially from the AEW faithful, about this big man can't wrestle, this guy can't do this guy can't do that. Two things, man. One, just because a guy doesn't wrestle like a Will Ospreay doesn't mean he can't deliver like a Will Ospreay. What I mean by that is, just because he can't no-sell flip outside the ring and give you 1,000,001 360 flips doesn't mean he can't go out there with his own style and still give you something just as compelling as was a Will Ospreay can give to you. As a matter of fact, in some cases, Will Ospreay is all aesthetic. That's what actually captures the attention of the casual audience. If you even want to talk about the few casual fans who like to peek into AEW, it's his colors. It's the way he looks. It's his interests. It's his actual aesthetic in itself. Optically, he looks like a guy who can connect with the audience. The moves, all that shit, it goes out of the way. Look at someone like AJ Styles. He ain't nowhere near close to the competitor that he used to be back in, say, 2006. And by that, I mean from the athleticism standpoint. He can still go. He can still tell a credible story. And he has a certain look behind him. That's why fans love AJ Styles. Even though he doesn't wrestle the way he used to wrestle back in the days, even though he's 20 years past what he used to do back in the days, doesn't take away from the fact that, no, AJ Styles can still go out there and do his own thing. Same thing can be said about a Will Hobbs. You take him, let him go out there, do his own thing, and the rest tells the story. The rest, it writes itself. You know what I mean? That's the first thing. The second thing is, I don't understand this whole thing, and I've been harping on this for the longest, man. When everybody is the same, no one is legitimately, or if everybody's trying to be different, then everybody is the same. You heard that saying before, man. You know, you got all these little small guys running around and shit like that, man. If Will Hobbs can just go out there, and destroy a bunch of talent and really get over. You already seen when you tried the experiment with someone like a Warlow, how that actually works out. It's not as if the big guys nowadays, they pretend as if the big guys nowadays wrestle like how the big guys back in the days wrestle. It's such bullshit. You got people like Kevin Owens doing swanton bombs like it's fucking nothing. You got guys like Luchasaurus doing standing shooting star presses, right? You got fucking guys like Warlow who can do planches over the top rope, man. Big men can wrestle nowadays. They can absolutely go. They are absolutely, if not way faster than the big guys back in the days. Hell, there are some big guys today who wrestle like cruiserweights about 20 or 30 years ago. And yet you sit here and you still want to keep up this nonsense positioning of, well, he can go out there and have a 5-star classic, therefore who needs him? Who needs him? You need him. You need a guy like Will Hobbs in a position to be seen more than. Because the more and more people who have to look at your television, the more and more people have to look at themselves in the mirror watching whatever show happens to be on at the moment, revolving around AEW. Who the fuck wants to see themselves on television? You want to see larger than life people. That's why superhero movies sell out so well. And like I said, Will Hobbs, now he has miles. Now he's getting older. Is there maybe a chance that they could turn around this ship? It's not even so much that it's if it's a chance or if it's not a chance. I don't think Tony Khan is committed or even has the incentive to even want to dwell within that direction. That's the fucked up part. Sadly, I look at a guy like Will Hobbs and people talk about WWE, and you know, you can say that they're no longer on the whole age thing anymore. Oh, this guy has to be this old. Oh, this guy has to be this old. Man, 40 today is the new 30, bro. 50 is the new 40. You go out there and you know what you're doing. They don't give a fuck about age. They're gonna hire you. My thing is though, do they want to hire you when you're getting up there in age with the miles? That's my problem. And hopefully, Will Hobbs, if not in AEW, he can go to WWE, make something of themselves, or maybe he can stay in AEW and Tony Khan can see that he's wasting potential, really good talent, along with a Warlow. And maybe, just maybe, us recognizing this means he is very much aware of what the fuck he's doing to these talents. He's much aware how he's wasting the potential of larger than life talent. When given the opportunity, they can run the ball and score a touchdown for him. When given the ball, when given the opportunity to be seen on television, people turn the channel, they land on how imposing that guy is. How the fuck you think a Brock Lesnar got over? But we'll see how life goes, and we'll see how life goes on as our time in AEW starts to wind down when they eventually go out of business. I kid. No, I don't. As always, my name is Devontae. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and I'll be catching you guys later. Don't expect any more videos later on today. I got to get ready for the presidential debate. Deuces and the P-Eyes.